Rain fell in slow, deliberate sheets, coating the city in a restless shimmer. I pulled my jacket closer and quickened my pace, my thoughts trailing somewhere between exhaustion and quiet resentment. It was past 10 when I left the office, another late night of campaigns, revisions, and the hollow comfort of professional success. The streets were nearly empty, save for the hum of passing cars and the occasional umbrella tilting against the wind. My name is Ethan, 35, married, successful, at least by every measurable standard. Yet, lately, I've felt like a ghost in my own life. Daniel, my husband, works nights at the hospital. He's gentle, rational, always composed. We used to talk about everything, the future, travel, our little dreams, but lately, we barely share more than polite exchanges between shifts. Our apartment has become an echo chamber of silence, clean and organized, but devoid of warmth. That I was halfway to the corner convenience store when I saw him. A young man sat cross-legged beneath the flickering awning, his hood pulled up, his jeans soaked through. He looked no older than 20, maybe younger. He held a paper cup, half-crushed, trembling slightly in the cold. When our eyes met, he hesitated before speaking. "Excuse me, sir, could you spare some change? I just need a bit for food." His voice was soft, uncertain, like someone apologizing for existing. I stopped, awkwardly patting my coat pockets, though I already knew I had no cash. "I don't have money on me," I said, "but if you're hungry, I can buy you something." He blinked, caught off guard, as if no one had said yes before. "Really?" "Yeah," I nodded toward the 24-hour diner across the street. "Come on." We crossed together, rain soaking our shoes. Inside, the diner's warmth wrapped around us, smelling faintly of coffee and grease. The waitress glanced up, offered a tired smile, and led us to a booth. The boy ordered cautiously, "Just soup and toast," while I got coffee I didn't need. He introduced himself as Liam. He had sharp cheekbones, a thin frame, and eyes the color of dull glass, eyes that seemed older than he was. Between sips, he told me pieces of his story. He'd come to the city months ago after his parents threw him out for being gay. He'd worked a few odd jobs until the money ran out. Some nights, he stayed at shelters, others, he didn't. "It's not so bad," he said, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You learn to get used to the cold." I listened, unsure what to say. There was a fragility about him, something both heartbreaking and defiant. He thanked me after every sentence, as though afraid I might change my mind about helping him. When he finished eating, I asked where he planned to sleep. He shrugged. "I'll find somewhere dry. Usually do." The rain outside had turned heavier, drumming against the windows like impatient fingers. I glanced out, then back at him. He looked so small in that booth, clutching the last piece of toast like it was the only thing tethering him to the world. "There's a motel a few blocks down," I offered. "I could cover a night for you." He hesitated, then shook his head. "They're full tonight. Been asking around." He gave a small laugh, brittle but sincere. "Guess I picked the wrong evening to be unlucky." For a moment, neither of us spoke. My conscience whispered warnings, "Don't get involved, don't blur boundaries," but compassion overruled them. I found myself saying words I hadn't planned to say. "You can stay at my place. Just for tonight. I've got a couch." Liam's eyes widened, suspicion flickering before it softened into gratitude. "Are you sure?" "I don't want to, it's fine," I interrupted, my voice steadier than I felt. "It's just one night." He nodded slowly, almost reverently, as though I'd offered him something sacred. When we stepped outside, the rain had thinned to a mist. The world smelled clean, uncertain that we walked in silence, side by side, our shadows stretching long under the streetlights. I could hear his quiet breathing, the soft shuffle of his shoes against the wet pavement. I told myself it was just kindness, nothing more, but as the city lights blurred in the drizzle, I realized something had shifted, small, unspoken, and dangerously alive, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't want to go home alone. The apartment felt quieter the next morning, like sound itself was holding its breath. Ethan stood by the counter, pouring coffee that had gone lukewarm. The storm had passed outside, but inside, something still trembled between them. Lucas sat at the table, scrolling through his phone, pretending not to notice Ethan's silence. Neither of them mentioned the night before, the fog, the question, the invitation that hovered unsaid. Yet every movement, every glance, carried the weight of it. "You didn't sleep much," Lucas said finally, voice cautious. "Neither did you," Ethan replied, taking the seat across from him. Lucas smiled faintly, though it didn't reach his eyes. "I kept thinking about what you said, about things being different in another life." Ethan's stomach tightened. He looked down, tracing a thumb along the mug's rim. "That was just talk." "Maybe." Lucas leaned back, watching him carefully. "But it didn't feel like just talk." The air thickened again, slow and charged. Ethan could feel the familiar ache of wanting to say more and the familiar fear that came right after. "You're overthinking it," he said softly, but his voice betrayed him. Lucas exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. "Yeah, maybe I am. Or maybe I'm just finally being honest." He stood, moving toward the window, watching raindrops slide down the glass. "Claire always said I never let people in. That I kept everyone at arm's length, even her." His reflection looked blurred, distant. She was right. "But last night. I didn't feel that wall with you." Ethan froze, the words sinking like stones. "Lucas, I'm not saying I understand it," Lucas interrupted. He laughed softly, uncertain. "When I asked if you ever thought about things being different. I wasn't asking just to ask." Ethan's pulse quickened. "You're straight," he whispered. Lucas turned around, his expression unreadable. "I thought I was." The words landed like a confession and a question all at once. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. Ethan stood, unsure whether to step closer or farther away. "You don't know what you're saying," he managed. Lucas crossed the distance between them, slow and deliberate. "Then tell me," he said. "Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me you didn't feel it too." Ethan's voice broke. "I can't." They stood inches apart now, no pretense, no laughter to hide behind. The silence was alive, pulsing with every heartbeat. Lucas reached out, his hand brushing against Ethan's arm, just enough to make him tremble. "This doesn't make sense," Ethan whispered. "I have Daniel." Lucas nodded. "I know." His fingers lingered for a second longer before dropping away. "And that's why I shouldn't have said anything. But the damage was already done." Ethan's breath came shallow, torn between guilt and relief. "You shouldn't have," he said, though every part of him was grateful that he did. Lucas gave a quiet, humorless laugh. "You know what's funny? I thought I came here to get over someone. Turns out I just found someone else I can't have." Ethan's chest ached. "Lucas, don't," Lucas interrupted softly. "Please don't make it harder by being kind." For a long moment, neither spoke. The sound of the clock filled the silence, steady and unforgiving. Then Lucas took a small step closer. "Can I ask you something?" Ethan nodded, unable to trust his voice. "Did you ever want to tell me back then?" Lucas asked. "In college?" Ethan met his gaze, eyes burning. "Every damn day." Lucas smiled sadly. "Guess I was too blind to see it." The space between them vanished, slow, inevitable. When their lips met, it wasn't wild or reckless, it was soft, uncertain, the kind of kiss that carried more truth than permission. It lasted only a second before Ethan pulled away, breathing hard. "This can't happen," Ethan said, voice shaking. "It already did," Lucas replied. Ethan stepped back, running a hand through his hair. The guilt hit like a tide, cold and immediate. "I need you to go," he whispered. Lucas's expression faltered, but he nodded. "Yeah. I figured." He picked up his bag quietly, pausing at the door. "For what it's worth," he said, "you're not the only one who's confused." The door closed softly behind him. Ethan stood there, staring at the empty space where Lucas had been. The apartment felt different now, emptier, yet charged with something that refused to fade. He pressed his palms to the counter, exhaling shakily. Outside, the sky was clearing. Light broke through the clouds, too bright for how heavy he felt inside. Daniel would be home tomorrow. The lie would begin then, Ethan whispered to himself, voice barely audible. Sometimes the truest confessions are the ones we can't keep. And somewhere beneath the sound of the dripping faucet, he could still hear Lucas's voice, soft, sincere, unforgettable. "You don't have to be." Morning came soft and gray, the sky still rinsed with last night's rain. I woke to the smell of coffee drifting through the hallway and the sound of my father's voice booming from the kitchen. By the time I came down, he and Michael were already seated at the table, laughing about something I hadn't heard. My mother hovered nearby, her movements quiet and deliberate, as though she were careful not to disturb a fragile peace. Morning, son, my father said without looking up from the newspaper. Michael's helping me fix the old fence later. You should give him a hand. I nodded, pouring myself a cup of coffee. Michael's eyes followed the motion, steady but unreadable. If you're up for it, he said. I could use someone younger to hold the board straight. Outside, the air smelled of wet earth and pine. We worked in near silence at first, passing tools, aligning panels, hammering nails. The occasional creak of wood broke the rhythm. Michael moved with the quiet precision of someone who'd spent years relying on discipline. His sleeves were rolled up, forearms streaked with sawdust, and every motion seemed deliberate, economical. After a while, he glanced over. You and your father get along. I hesitated, tightening my grip on the plank. We coexist. He smiled faintly. That's a polite word for something heavier. He's different, I admitted. I think he only knows how to talk to soldiers. Michael paused, driving a nail in cleanly. Men like him were taught to survive, not to feel. Sometimes the battlefield follows them home. The words lingered, settling deeper than I expected. There was no judgment in his tone, only understanding. I found myself wanting to keep him talking that we worked until noon, sweat clinging to our skin despite the cool breeze. When we finally stopped, he handed me a bottle of water. Good work, he said. You've got your father's focus. I'm not sure that's a compliment, I replied, half smiling that he laughed softly, and for a moment the space between us felt smaller, less defined by age or circumstance. After lunch, my father left for the hardware store, muttering something about needing replacement bolts. My mother retreated to her sewing room upstairs. The house fell into an unusual quiet. Michael and I ended up in the garage, where an old motorcycle sat under a dusty tarp. He brushed his hand across it with something like reverence. Your father and I built this before deployment, he said. Never thought I'd see it again. I lifted the tarp completely. The bike's frame was rusted, the paint dulled by years of neglect. Think it still runs? I asked with a little faith. He smiled. And patience. We worked side by side, wiping, tightening, adjusting. Grease marked our hands. Each time our shoulders brushed, a jolt of awareness ran through me. I caught him watching once, just a glance, but his expression softened when our eyes met, something restrained, something cautious. You ever feel like you don't quite fit where you're supposed to? I asked without thinking that he leaned back, wiping his hands with a rag. All the time, he said. Most of my life, I've been standing half in the shadows, pretending it's enough. The air thickened. I wanted to ask what he meant, but his eyes told me not to. There was a gravity there, a shared understanding neither of us wanted to name. When the bike sputtered to life, the sudden roar filled the garage. We both laughed, louder than we needed to. It broke the tension for a moment, but when the sound faded, silence returned heavier than before. Evening settled in. My father was still out, the sky painted with the orange remains of daylight. From the porch, we watched the clouds drift over the hills. Michael poured 2 small glasses of whiskey, offering one to me. Your father would kill me, I said. He doesn't have to know. The liquid burned down my throat, sharp and warm. He sat beside me, close enough that I could feel the faint heat of his arm. Ethan, he said quietly, don't let fear make your choices for you. It's a prison that looks like safety. Before I could answer, thunder cracked in the distance. The storm returned, sudden and fierce. We ran inside, laughing, half drenched. The power flickered out, leaving only the glow of a single candle my mother kept on the counter. In that fragile light, Michael reached for my shoulder, steadying me, maybe, but his hand lingered. The moment stretched, wordless. I met his eyes, and everything unsaid pressed between us. Then he pulled back, breath unsteady. We should check the windows, he murmured, but the touch stayed, even after he stepped away, and that night, lying awake in the dark, I realized something dangerous had begun. The apartment felt heavier after Liam left, as if his absence had thickened the air. I stood by the door long after it closed, the faint echo of footsteps still clinging to the hallway. Everything looked the same furniture, the same framed photographs, the same order Daniel admired, but nothing felt the same. The space carried the residue of something unspoken, something fragile and irrevocable. Daniel came home just after dusk. He looked tired but calm, the way he always did after long hours at the hospital. You're home early, he said, dropping his bag by the counter. His smile was soft, unknowing. That's rare. Yeah, I murmured, forcing steadiness into my voice. Just wanted a quiet night. He leaned in to kiss my cheek, familiar and fleeting. It landed like a memory instead of a touch. We spoke in the language we perfected over the years, routine questions, safe answers. How was work? Did you eat? Want tea? A choreography of comfort that now felt hollow. When he went to shower, I lingered in the kitchen, staring at the empty mug Liam had used that morning. I washed it slowly, my hands trembling under the warm stream of water. No trace remained once I placed it back in the cabinet, yet something inside me refused to settle. That night, Daniel fell asleep beside me, his breathing steady and rhythmic. I lay awake, my thoughts circling like restless birds. The guilt was sharp but uneven, it didn't come from what had happened, but from what it revealed. For years, I had lived beside Daniel, dutiful and silent, convincing myself that stability was the same as love. But now, in the stillness, I knew that wasn't true. Days passed in muted succession. Daniel worked late, I went through motions. The apartment seemed emptier now, not because Liam was gone, but because I could no longer ignore what had been missing all along. The silence between Daniel and me wasn't peaceful anymore, it was suffocating. One Saturday morning, while he was at work, I opened the old storage cabinet near the balcony. Inside, beneath stacks of unused paperwork, I found a box of my forgotten art supplies. Dried brushes, half-used tubes of paint, sketch pads yellowed with time. I hadn't painted since before we married. Daniel used to say art was just a phase. I had believed him that. I set up the easel near the window and began to paint. My hand trembled at first, then steadied as color met canvas. I painted without plan or purpose, just feeling. Lines became shapes, shapes turned into shadows walking through rain. When I stepped back, I realized I'd painted that night, two figures beneath a single streetlight, one leading, one following, their faces blurred by drizzle. The painting wasn't about Liam or me. It was about the space between two strangers who recognized something missing in each other. When Daniel came home, he paused at the doorway, staring at the canvas. "You're painting again?" "Yeah," I said simply. He nodded, his tone unreadable. "Looks good." He walked away before I could reply. After that, I returned to the diner a few times, half hoping to see Liam sitting in his corner booth, half dreading it. But he was never there. Each time, I left a few bills tucked under a napkin by the window, a quiet ritual, meaningless perhaps, but somehow necessary. On one visit, the waitress mentioned she'd seen a boy matching his description catch a bus out of town. "Said he was going somewhere warmer," she said. I smiled faintly, thanked her, and stepped back into the rain. That evening, I finished the painting. I titled it, The Night of Rain. The name felt right, simple, unembellished, true. I placed it by the window, where the light could touch it every morning. Daniel passed by, glanced at it once, then at me. "It's beautiful," he said, almost softly. For a moment, I thought he saw me again, the way he used to. Then his phone buzzed, and the moment dissolved. After he left the room, I stood alone, watching the reflection of the painting shimmer faintly in the glass. Outside, rain began to fall once more, gentle, persistent, familiar. I whispered into the quiet, unsure whether to the boy, to myself, or to the life I'd lost somewhere along the way. "Be safe, wherever you are." The rain answered with its steady rhythm against the pane, neither forgiving nor condemning, just existing. Like love. Like memory. Like truth. And as I watched it fall, I realized some encounters never really end. They just change shape and stay with you, quietly, forever.